All right, Sarah, you're good to go.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Sarah Armet. I am the Affinities Chair for JNF Future New York, a member of High Society, and JNF Future National Conference Chair 2020. It is my privilege to introduce an extraordinary man who has devoted his time, passion, and resources to advance Jewish National Fund's mission. This is someone who I look to as a friend, a mentor, and my New York family, someone who has made a personal impact in defining my Jewish National Fund story. Last year, I had the privilege of leading a group of young professionals on a JNF Future mission to Israel. On the very last day of the Whirlwind mission, our bus stops at Gush Etzion Visitor Center. At this point of the trip, I'm running on empty. I've just about reached capacity, but my ears perk up when Shani Simkowitz says, "Is anyone here from Long Island? Does anyone know Michael and Ronit Kessler?" Now, anyone from Dix Hills, Greater New York, the Tri-State and beyond knows Michael Kessler. He is a respected businessman who is Executive Vice President of Financial Operations for Douglaston Development. He is a dedicated community builder who has led a range of philanthropic efforts inside and outside the Jewish world. He received UJA's Community Leadership Award with his wife Ronit in 2011. He served as president of the Dix Hills Jewish Center. He currently sits as the president of Jewish National Fund in the Tri-State, as well as chair of McCore, Jewish National Fund's ambassador group. I knew of Michael's involvement with the Society for the Preservation of Israel's Heritage Sites, his commitment to Ayalon Institute Bullet Factory, his engagement in the Galilee, but I never grasped Michael's personal connection to the land and people of Israel until that day at Gush Etzion. The bravery of the pioneers, the sacrifices they made to ensure the future of the land of Israel, their heroism, their fight until the very end. After a screening of the film, our group of JNF Futures sat in a circle as our tour winded down. Not a word to be spoken, not a dry eye in the house. In that moment, we all understood the true meaning and responsibility of Lador Vador. From generation to generation, it's on us to pay it forward. I'm getting all choked up. Michael Kessler carries this message of Tikkun Olam in all that he does. While he is working tirelessly to build communities at home, he is building a brighter future for the Israel of tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my McCore mentor, Michael Kessler.
Wow. You know what? I really must be a good mentor because those words, Sarah, really touched me. And it makes everything I do and we do really all worthwhile when someone from your generation recognizes it. And it really touches me here. And I just want to talk a little about the Gush and about Yossi. And, Yossi's story is one closely linked with Israel's history, its struggle, and ultimately its triumph. The Gush Etzion is located just outside of Jerusalem. It's deeply rooted in the pioneering spirit of modern Zionism, as well as biblical Judaism. Its founders, many of whom were survivors of the Holocaust, including my father-in-law, which I'll speak about, came to Israel to work the land and live the Zionist dream. However, they quickly became the defenders of Israel as the last Jewish stronghold before Jerusalem during Israel's War of Independence. And a lot of them didn't get to see Independence Day because they were either killed or captured the day before Israel declared independence. So my personal story about the Gush was we were riding on one of those one-day Israel tours that JNF sponsors. We were taking a roots trip. We had gone to Poland to see where my father-in-law grew up, and then we went to the Czech Republic to see where my mother-in-law grew up. We went to the camps with my father-in-law. We took that journey, and then we went to Israel. And my father-in-law, after liberation at his DP camp, was sent to Kibbutz Manit for 2 years. learning Hebrew, learning about the land and people of Israel. And in 1947, he was sent to Kibbutz Revadim. Now, Revadim was one of the four founding kibbutzes of the Gush Etzion, and there he was taught to be a soldier, to defend Israel. And when the war started, he was one of the defenders of Israel, actually using bullets from the Allian Institute, which is just a coincidence, but it's a great story. And after all he's been through, you know, 2 ghettos, losing his family, going through concentration camps, death march, he ended up fighting for the land of Israel. And he was lucky enough that the Jordanians realized after, unfortunately, the massacre at Kfar Etzion, they said, hey, you know, we need to have prisoners. We're going to have to exchange prisoners because they have our prisoners and we have their prisoners. So at Kibbutz Revadim, they were captured by the Jordanians, sent on a truck to Hebron where the Arabs were rioting. In the middle of the night, the Jordanians put them on another truck and sent them to the Jordanian desert where they were held captive for 9 months. A lot of this we didn't know about until my father-in-law spoke, but we went back and we were on this bus tour, and Ariel Kutner was leading the tour, and it turned out, he said, oh, your father-in-law was at Revadim? We go, yeah, we were just at Revadim the other day. He goes, no, but the Revadim, you know, was in the Gush, and, you know, you should go to the visitor center. And he made a phone call, and the next day, the family got on in our van with our driver, and we met Shani at the Gush Etzion Visitor Center, and we saw the original movie, and my father-in-law really connected, like, he saw the transformation, he saw the tree, he was there, and he was amazed, you know, that we have it, you know, from 1967, it was recovered in the war, and people were living there, and it was a vibrant community again. It wasn't where the kibbutz where he was, because after the war, he was sent to Kibbutz Revadim, which is the new Revadim, and the only good thing that came out of that is that the Red Cross published in the Israeli newspapers about all the prisoners of war that were released, and his only living relative saw his name and met him when he was released. So, you know, out of lemons come lemonade. So that was a good story. So I know I'm talking too much about my personal story, but I have to say we went to the kibbutz. We went to the visitor center. I decided when Shani came to me and said, we're building a new visitor center, I knew I wanted to do something to honor my father-in-law while he's still alive, and he's still alive at 95. And you know, she was very forthright. When you contribute to the Jewish National Fund, you really have a lot of say where your money goes, especially when you're undertaking a project. And we looked, and I said, you know, he really likes gardening, and he really likes landscaping. What more perfect would be for my family to honor his heroism and his survivalness than dedicate the landscaping and gardens at the Gush Etzion Visitor Center. And that's what we did. It was a labor of love. Shani gave me pictures of every update. She gave me plot plans of where every tree was going. And lo and behold, when we went back for the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, we had a ceremony with all our relatives that were living in Israel at the time, and all Meir, and that's his name, Meir Yushirovich's grandchildren, and it was very, very moving. And in that new film, at the end, you'll see there's a soldier, and my father looks and he goes, Gingy, it's a Gingy, it's Sfiki, Sinji, right? Who's a ginger, who was one of his childhood friends, you know, in the 20s when they grew up together. And he was one of the soldiers that Shani featured in the new movie, Love Letters. And that's my personal connection to the Gush. The story of the Gush Etzion and JNF's connection to this important part of Israel history is evident today, especially when it's the two national holidays, with the Memorial Day and the Independence Day, you know, one after another. We commemorate all those that lost their lives in the defense of Israel, and we celebrate all of those that defended the land of Israel, and we celebrate our independence. The story of Kfar Etzion is no different, and you will hear in just a minute from Yossi Ron, whose parents were both killed in the War of Independence. The establishment of Gush Etzion and the Gush Etzion Foundation is a testament to the legacy of the 240 brave men and women who were killed in the War of Independence and the 260, including my father-in-law, who were taken prisoners of war. It is a symbol of our triumph as we look forward toward the future, but never forgetting what we had to sacrifice to be here today. Yossi was born in Kfar Etzion shortly before the War of Independence. He's one of 47 orphans of Kfar Etzion, and now he's the chairman of the organization for the children of Kfar Etzion. After the war, he was adopted by one of the widows of Kfar Etzion and raised with the other children whose parents were killed. Yossi is a graduate of the Technion with a degree in electronics and served for 21 years as a colonel in the Israeli Air Force. We are honored here to have him here today to share his story with us. But I did forget, before he speaks, we want to show a short film clip. So, Gary, sorry.
Gush Etzion, the symbol of return and of an eternal bond between the Jewish people and their homeland. In the early 1930s, the JNF purchases land in Gush Etzion. In 1943, after attempts to settle the area, the Kfutzat Avraham pioneers settle in Gush Etzion. In 1948, the group expands and comprises 160 people. 60 of them are children. At the outbreak of the War of Independence, attacks begin on Gush Etzion. On January 1st, 1948, after painful casualties, a decision is made to transfer the women and children to Jerusalem. On May 13th, 1948, one day before the declaration of the State of Israel, Gush Etzion falls. For 19 years, between 1948 and 1967, the orphans of Kibbutz Kfar Etzion remained faithful to the memory of their destroyed homes. At every opportunity, they would gather together on the Judean hilltops and gaze from a distance with yearning. Immediately following the Six-Day War, the orphaned sons and daughters and survivors of Gush Etzion, in coordination with the government of Israel, returned home.
And now, without further ado, Yossi's going to tell us his story. He's going to take some questions afterwards. So here you go, Yos.
Okay, hello. As you understand, my name is Yossi Ron, and I'm the son of Yechiel and Tzipora Rosenfeld, who were massacred on the day of the last battle of the Gush on May 13, 1948, what we say Dalet Iyar Tashach. About 72 years ago, on this very day, one day before the declaration of independence by Ben-Gurion, we use the number 49. I heard Michael say about 47 orphans, but I know 49 out of 71 children of Kfar Etzion became orphans. And this happened as a result of the deaths of many defenders who were killed during the battles on Kfar Etzion and the massacre of most of the defenders of Kfar Etzion in the last battle. I speak to you today as a representative of those children whose parents gave their lives defending the land of Israel and the Jewish people. The immediate result of the UN resolution for the partition of the British-ruled Palestine on 29th November 1947, we call it, by the way, Chavtet, like the Hebrew words for 29, Chavtet of November. It was a siege of all the isolated Jewish settlements, including the 4 kibbutzim in Gush Etzion. Out of them, of the 4 kibbutzim, and I heard Michael speak about Revadim. Revadim was the last one, very young. Out of them, Kfar Etzion was the oldest and the most established kibbutz, And it was only 5 years. Kfar Etzion was with us only for 5 years, from 1943 to 1948. Few weeks after the siege started, there was a decision to evacuate the children and mothers to Jerusalem. My mother was the only mother who decided to stay to fight in Kfar Etzion side by side to her husband, my father. The evacuation took place on the 5th of January, 1948. My mother put me under the supervision of a close friend, Tzipora Bilig, same name as her, and on the evacuation. I was about 1 year and a month at that time. She didn't see me, she didn't meet me afterwards. She was killed like 5 months after she gave me to Tzipora Bilig, and she never saw me again, except by pictures. I have no memories of my father and my mother. To this day, they remain the only married couple, by the way, and this good, the only married couple ever to be killed together as soldiers in the history of the State of Israel. And I know from my investigations, I know of one other mother who were killed as a mother, as a soldier in Israel, but this is the only 2 cases that I know of mother who is killed as a soldier. Other mothers were killed, you know, on other occasions, but not as soldiers. My parents left me alone in the world without any relatives. I what we call Netzer Acharon in Hebrew, or last survivor. No relatives of first, of second degree. This is at least what I saw for long years. One day in 1971, 31 years later, a blonde-haired lady showed up on my doorstep and presented herself as my aunt, a sister of my mother. It was found that she was with my mother all the time of the Shoah, including the forced labor camps. But after the liberations by the Russians, she didn't want to go to Israel. She stayed in Poland, and then in 1968, she moved to the US. And from that on, later on, they went to Iran to work there. My uncle was an architect. And then when the Shah fell down and Khomeini went up, they ran away from Iran, landed in Israel, and they first met me first time in my life. I didn't know about it. My parents met during the Shoah in a very cruel forced labor camp, Skarjisko. They somehow fell in love in this horrible place. My mother was at that time 14 years old. My father was 18. Friends telling me that he was not looking at her, but she was very decisive. And after 2.5 years in the camps, they became very close friends. And they were liberated from Chenstokhova by the Russians on January 17th, 1945. 3 weeks later, they married in Lodz. At that time, my mother was less than 17 years old. My mother did not grow up in a particularly religious home, and her parents were not Zionists. My father, on the other hand, was a religious and a Zionist from home and from his activity in Bnei Akiva. My mother's strong commitment to Zionism and religion came about as a result of my father's influence. A year after my parents' liberation, as they moved to the camps in Germany, displacement camps in Germany, and then my mother received a certificate for legal immigration to what that called Palestine. My father came to Palestine illegally on a ship captured by the British. He was taken to Palestine, to Cyprus, and held in a prisoner's camps. He came to Israel about 8 months later, and they were reunited in Kfar Etzion in June of 1947, when I was 7 months old. My father, you know, as a matter of fact, all the focus was on my mother because she was the only mother. And so everybody talked about her bravery and how good fighter she was, and about her personality, very unique personality. So I would say that many lamps were not on my father, but later on I met people who were under the control or the commandment of my father in Cyprus, in the Oniyat Ma'apilim, and they told me that he was a very nice person, natural leader, fearless, and very, very smart. It's very, as I said, I don't have anything. My mother was a very unique one, as you can understand. She was very energetic, very strong, had strong convictions. She was very brave and very determined fighter. The decision to evacuate the mother and the children as a result of the siege of Kfar Etzion was taken 6 months after my parents reunited in Kfar Etzion in the mid of 1947. Now, after having been separated for so long, out of 2.5 years that they were married, out of it, half of the time they were separated. He was in Poland, in Cyprus, and she was in Kfar Etzion. So my mother, when the decision for the evacuation, my mother didn't want to leave my father. And on the other, she made a difficult decision instead to separate from me and gave me to her friend to take care of me. Many people, you know, have asked me in the past if I feel anger or resentment towards my mother because she abandoned me. The answer is I have neither anger nor resentment towards my mother. I admire her, by the way, I admire both of them. I have the utmost respect for their personality, for their values, and for their determination to do the most important thing in life, as she saw it, to fight for an independent Jewish state. I only carry with me deep sorrow for not having had the chance to know her personally, and my father as well. The people of Kfar Etzion well understood the huge risk they took upon themselves in the decision to be the front line of the defense for Jerusalem. I would like to tell you 2 stories. One is the Lamed Hay story, which was very important on the Milchemet HaShichrur and the Independence War. On 14th January, there was a big attack on Kfar Etzion by about 1,000 of local Arabs, and they fought back very successfully and made the attackers run away with like 100 casualties. Yet the commander of Gush Etzion at that time was Uzi Narkis. Later on, he was a general and the commander in command of Jerusalem and the central region of Israel during a 6-day war. Uzi Narkis sent urgent messages to supply him immediately with reinforcement and with ammunition, because all the ammunition he had was used to defeat the attackers. 35 fighters walked on the night of the 15th January to bring the vital supply to Kfar Etzion, but were discovered by the Arabs. And after a half-day battle, were all killed on a hill less than 10 kilometers from Kfar Etzion. They are called the Lamed Hay. Lamed Hay is the Hebrew way we say 35. A British officer brought them their corrupted bodies to Kfar Etzion, and they were buried there on January 19th, 3 days after they killed in the battle. I would like to read a few sentences from my mother's letters to her sisters in Poland, and my father's letter to a friend to illustrate their emotion during the siege of Kfar Etzion. On January 20th, 1 day after the burial of the Lamed Hay, my mother wrote to her sister. By the way, the original letter was in Polish. It was translated to me to English, and then I translated to me back to Hebrew, and I translated back to English. By the way, I saw, during the audience here, I saw friends of mine from Los Angeles, family from Florida. There will be some other people from Toronto, from New York. So I have quite a big family today. Some of them, by the way, not my original family, but from the side of my adopting mother. And we have a very good relationship with them. They are living in Florida today. And my mother is writing, so 1 day after the burial of the 35 of the Lamed Hay, One cannot describe such terrible times. But I know one thing, my dearest sister. We all swore over the open graves that we are not going to abandon these stones and hills. If we shall not be able to defend this land, we shall fall defending it. 2 months later, on March 13, my mother writes, we are facing the sea, and there is a sea behind us, and there is nowhere to run away. We shall fight for this land because this is the right, just thing to do. If we shall not succeed in defending it, we shall pay for it in our blood. Whatever happens, our children will never again face the gas chambers. This will be the use of a free nation. And my father wrote, dated in a letter dated 29th, like 10 days after the burial of the Lamed Hay. We are in a fateful campaign. There have already been many casualties, and there will be more. But everything is worth the independence of our nation. We shall eventually find comfort in the resurrection of our nation in our independent states. So you can see from this letter that they were quite aware of what they are, and the reality, and in what dangers they face, but remain determined to fulfill their mission. The last battle of Kfar Etzion was held on May 13th, as Michael said, one day before Ben Gurion declared independence. After the ammunition was finished and the armored vehicles of the Jordan Legion broke out the fences of the kibbutz, and the defenders decided to surrender. While they were standing with hands up, the Arab shot in their direction, and 127 out of 131 defenders were killed in the last battle and the massacre that happened just after. My father was killed up there, and my mother a little bit later in the underground command post. As I said before, I did not have the opportunity to personally know my father, my parents. Yet I feel I have taken important lessons from them. Those lessons can be summed up in their boundless love to Am Yisrael, their dedication to Medinat Israel, and their emunah in what we call Israel eternity, or Netzach Israel. The final lesson being that no sacrifice is too great to protect those cherished values. I was asked many times over the years, how is it possible to have strong feelings for one's parents if you never really knew them? For many years, I sensed hidden presence of my parents, but I was not fully capable of dealing with the presence in an emotional way. All of that changed with the death of our daughter, Tzipora, in a car accident. We named our first daughter Tzipora in memory of my mother. Following her death in a tragic car accident at the age of 20, the same age as my mother was killed, my emotions changed. Somehow, the sorrow I experienced over the loss of my daughter connected me in a powerful way to my parents. Following that tragedy, my wife Esti and I decided to pursue the path of life and creation in parallel to or in spite of the sorrow we feel for those no longer with us. I believe this is the primary legacy we inherited from my parents. I also believe this is the primary legacy we shall leave to our children and grandchildren. And by the way, I have today five children, and we have about 18 grandchildren. So we have a big family, and we try to keep them a happy family, and we try to combine the sorrow and happiness in life. And we are working on it all the time, and I believe we quite succeed. I thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to share with you my story, as well the story and the message of the people of Kfar Etzion. I would like to invite you to Kfar Etzion Heritage Center to learn more and to personally experience the big story of Kfar Etzion and Gush Etzion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yossi, for sharing your story. I mean, having just gone to the Visitor Center last year, Your mother's story touched me, and I remember leaving Israel that night and just carrying that story with me and sharing it with all of my young professional friends of JNF Future when we got home. And it's because of you why we do what we do every day and continue to spread the message of the pioneers. At this point, I want to open up this phone call. We have an incredible turnout of 80 participants. If anyone has questions, if you could please write them in the chat, and Yossi is here to answer questions.
I shall be happy to talk. Speak slowly, please, and I'll send it by the chat.
Well, there's the first comment I will share is Michael Kessler is treating everyone to wine at Gush Etzion Winery. So may we all meet there very soon.
I hope so, as soon as possible. I shall go out of this seger, in isolation. Yeah. Any question? Maybe not?
I have a question.
Okay.
So with these letters, you say you don't have anything from your parents. So the letters that you have is just from your aunt that brought them to you.
I had, you know, the main problem with my parents, because they were both killed in Kfar Etzion, all their personal belongings, personal letters, personal pictures, and everything which was personal, I have nothing of this. The only thing I have, things, letters that they, and pictures they sent out of Kfar Etzion. And these letters and pictures came to me slowly. For 60 years, by the way, I never talked about myself, about my parents. I was trying to not to look at the past, always go to the future. But at the age of 60, somehow I reconnected to my past. And when I started to talk about it, then many letters came to me, many pictures, many people who know my parents. And now I'm much more than I knew before. So I have today quite a good understanding and knowledge. And of course, after I met my aunt, she told me about where they lived in Poland. She gave me the address. I could go there and see the house. Nothing special about it. The only one question she never answered me. Why did you come earlier to find me? And she never answered me. Her daughter is saying that, you know, for Shoah survivors, sometimes there are some questions which are not answered. I don't know. She never answered, and I don't know why they didn't come before, but they were in very good relations, my mother and her.
So we have a few more people that would like to say hello. Esther Stein would like to say hello. Can we unmute Esther Stein?
Yes, of course. Very good friend of us in Los Angeles. Yeah.
To Yossi and Esti, your cousins Susan Schneider and David say hi.
Ah, very nice. You see, as I said, I had an aunt. I had one aunt I met like in 1979. 15 years ago, I had a call from one Susan Schneider. Let's say it was in-law, but let's say Susan Schneider. An in-law of Susan Schneider called me. And she said that cousin of my father, Yechiel Rosenfeld, met after the Shoah in Warsaw. Then later on, he went to Brooklyn. And for 55 years, he was telling everybody that he has a cousin who was killed in Kfar Etzion. And the same name. And they never tried to look for me. But after he passed away, somehow the in-law heard about the story, called a friend in Kfar Etzion, Gush Etzion, and asked him if he can locate Yossi, the son of Yechiel Rosenfeld. It took about 24 hours for my cousin, second cousin, Susan, to find me, and we talked, and she was in Israel at the time. We met the day after, and now I have 2 first cousins and 2 second cousins. Susan Schneider is one. Oh, hi, hello. Eti and Alex. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you took the
Alexander wants to
picture.
say hi.
Hi, hello.
Hi, how are you? Well, it's interesting. One loses family sometimes, but
you always gain family with the friends who are closer sometimes than the family.
Yeah.
So you still have those, you still have that family.
You have us
Thank you.
as a family, as you know.
Yeah, of course.
I believe, did Herman Lebersfeld have a question as well? We saw your hand raised.
Yeah. Hi, Herman.
Hi. Hi, SD.
Hi.
Hi, Esty.
Hi. How are you? We miss you.
Thank
Come
you.
see us. Come see us.
Yes,
Yeah.
come to see us.
Right.
Oh,
We'll be there.
we have
Thank you for that
airplane
wonderful
now.
presentation.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, how is the weather in
Oh
Florida?
my God.
It has been magnificent. The sun is out every day. It starts out at 65 and winds up at 85. And we're loving it. You know, no place to go. I just Adele and I at home. We don't even see our children. They're afraid to come over and that they would give us the virus. So we're here in the house and enjoying it. I love it.
You look younger than ever.
No responsibilities.
Because we are far from you.
I'd love to see them.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for people who didn't know me before? The Gary booklet, one of the JNF. Okay, any?
This has
I
been
see
truly
Sonia
amazing.
Graham, been to Gush Etzion with groups, an amazing experience and more people. Okay. Michael, Yossi, we thank you for the time. Stay. Okay, any more question or anything to say, statement? Love to everybody.
Well, thank you again for joining us. This was
Okay.
such a
Thank you,
nice
Sarah.
I don't remember. And it's so nice to have us all together. So everyone stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see each other very soon in Israel.
Okay, we've recorded the session also. You can catch it on our YouTube channel at Jewish National Fund, youtube.com/Jewish National Fund, and more programming available both in archive form and on demand at jnf.org/on-demand, jnf.org/on-demand. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, please don't close the session. I would like